Call it master power. Now, some guys got it, some guys don't. He-Man's got it, Greyskull Castle. But keeping it is a powerful hassle. Skeletor wants the castle too, with jawbridge, lasers, trapdoor. Shoot, wouldn't you? Maybe he'll get it, maybe he won't. It's master power. Now, some guys got it, some guys don't. Castle Greyskull from the Masters of the Universe collection. You put it together. Action figures each sold separately from Mattel. Got it?
Hey everyone ever, and welcome to 20th Century Pop, the show where we try to understand the present while living in the past. My name is Tim Blevins. My co-host is normally Bob Canning, and today we don't actually have a new episode. As we mentioned last week, this podcast is going up every other week now. It's a new schedule, at least for a little while. But to supplement that, to fill in the empty spaces, we're going to be posting some bonus episodes of maybe quick conversations or flashbacks to older episodes of the show. And today, for our first new bonus episode, we're posting a blast from our past of a podcast about the past. We're bringing you episode 9 of this show when Bob and I took a look at the FILMATION cartoon He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, specifically an episode entitled The Taking of Greyskull. Now, this episode of our show originally aired on March 16th, 2017, long before the advent of any of our post-production practices. So as a result, it might sound a little muffled or have a garbled sound due to audio drift issues so common to the early days of this podcast. We hope, however, that you might still be able to find it insightful and informative, again, because it's a rerun. I don't know. Look, we'll be back next week to celebrate the 25th anniversary of a possibly punk album that best reflected where Bob and I were at in 1994. But until then, here's this again. The one thing I was excited to see before we get into, I guess, the birthday is the opening sequence.
Okay.
The opening sequence of the show, just with the Filmation credits, and then you get this familiar narration where Prince Adam walks and addresses the camera directly. He's got the music playing behind him, and that I was actually excited to see that opening bit because it sets up the show. You know, it makes any episode of the show an entry-level show because he tells you who he is, tells you the setup with the power sword and the villains.
The fabulous secret powers.
Yes, they are pretty fabulous. That's true. And
isn't that what he says? Or did I write that down
fabulous, wrong? No, I think it's fabulous secret powers were revealed to me, and then he holds up the sword. But no, it works because if I'm remembering right, and I was trying to rack my brain to remember. There's no real origin story to He-Man on the cartoon. There's no real origin episode for any of this shit in the show, really. I mean, you don't get. I mean, I guess in this episode we get a line or two. You don't get like how Greyskull was built or how Prince Adam became He-Man. Was he He-Man first? Was he Prince Adam? Whatever. So that little introduction at the beginning with like this very triumphant music and everything, I like that. And I think as a kid, I liked that he was talking to me. I think breaking the fourth wall was a big deal for me as a kid. I know it was mostly in comedies, but the fact that this character was talking to me as a child, as I watched this, that made me. I kind of settled into that pretty quick. That was kind of nice.
Sure. I have a strong reaction to a lot of show openers because I think that's the thing that is the same with everything from your childhood. The episodes are going to be different, but that opening is always the same. And so, I always have like just like a sense memory to hearing it and seeing it. Like, I don't think I've seen the Filmation logo in forever. Yeah, and I saw that and I was like, oh, that's such a great logo.
That's rich.
And just remembering it.
And I think something about that, like this cartoon having credits and having names on it, like that set something into motion in my mind. Because when I used to make little videotape movies with my parents' VCR camcorder, and even before that, probably because I would do almost cinematic I would stage how I played with my action figures with, like a plot and music and everything. I think I would always think of that little Filmation, like kind of like a child's version of a Spike Lee joint or whatever. It's just kind of like there was something something really resonated with seeing that again. So,
yeah.
But you're right. This happened with the Voltron episode too, and probably with a lot of stuff we'll talk about from childhood. The reoccurring segment that you would tune into every day, 5 days a week, and every week throughout the year. That might be, in most cases, the most memorable piece of any of this nostalgia from our childhood.
Yeah.
And going right in from that, it goes to a pretty nice title card. You get like this painted background. I think it was of Castle Grayskull with the title of the episodes. And I remember those always being cool. I always kind of like that. It's like a very moody. It kind of reminded me of, I don't know if you watched the Batman animated series in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would always start the episodes. Yeah, with these beautiful, just moody, artistic little images. And I don't know, it made me, the watercolors, the palette's kind of grim. And, that made me start thinking that maybe this, the show did have probably good background. Something about the show was well animated. So yeah, the opening credits and the title card were obviously nice starts. But yes, getting into this idea of a birthday, the first thing we're kind of handed is a character that I think in the first half, if I'm remembering right, you're not a fan of. I am a fan of.
Correct. Orko. I never cared for Orko.
You didn't like his little mirror bit at the beginning where his the O falls off his shirt and his reflection reaches out to pick it up and he kind of just
that was okay. That was fine. But just Orko in general, and then the rest of the storyline, and I had forgotten, and I'm going to jump ahead. I mean, we'll get to it and we'll talk more about it, but I had forgotten his bit at the end. I think that's at the end of every episode where he gives us a lesson. Maybe that's why I didn't care for Orko. I didn't want him telling me how to live my life.
He had some very, at the end of every episode, there was always a educational lesson. And Orko gave the one in this episode, but it wasn't always him. I think it was usually whichever character had the focal point of the episode.
There's a focal point? Orko doesn't have the focal point of this episode.
Well, I think in this one, since there was no moral, as we'll see when we get into the story, there's no morals or things that children could actually practice in their regular life. Orko is made a birthday cake by Chef, I forget his name.
Chef Allen.
Chef Allen, the Eternian palace chef, makes him eventually a birthday cake. And I guess he eats too much because that's what they use at the end, where he gives you a lesson, which again, we can talk about at the end, which is kind of, it's not so much don't eat sweets, it's know your limits.
Yeah. Now, is Chef Allen a recurring character? I could not find him in the list of He-Man characters. Was he just brought in for this special episode?
That's my guess. I mean, I don't recall there being other adventures where a chef was needed or where someone had to quickly stir something.
I love how he's just referred to like we should know who he is. Like he's talking, he's asking, he's trying to get people to wish him a happy birthday, but they're pretending that they don't know it's a special day. And Orko's all of a sudden like, oh, I know. I'll go see Chef Allen.
as if there's a child out there whose dream isn't to be He-Man, isn't to be, a leader like Tila or good with machines like Man-at-Arms. It's to be just like Chef Allen, sitting there with his frying pan action figure, happy that, Chef Allen's making an appearance. And we were talking in the first half about the commercialization of the show. It is true, like watching this episode, waiting to see, which of the toy characters is going to show up. Because you always have the core team of, I think, He-Man, Tila, and Man-at-Arms are kind of your core group. And then, whenever they have to go do something, usually they'd round up some random character with, in this episode, it happens to be Ram Man, an individual who can ram things with his head.
Yes.
But, so Chef Allen kind of fulfills, I guess, that role. Except that, there's no real reason for him to speak. There's no real reason to have him. And there's something about the animation of Chef Allen. It's very unnerving.
Yeah.
Like all the background characters in Eternia look like that, but that animation made me a little uncomfortable. I don't know how old Orko is, but I feared for his safety in that scenario. But Orko, I feel like a lot of cartoons, I don't know if they still do this, but he's kind of like the kid character. I feel like shows a lot of times had like this kid character or sidekick. There were the Wonder Twins. I guess Robin from Batman and Robin. There's Batmite. Batman has a lot of kids in his world.
Yeah, we won't get into
T-Bob
that.
on some episode. I mean, Chef Allen is probably well versed in that, but like or if I guess there's like that robot T-Bob on Mask. There, anytime someone has a pet chimpanzee, even the Ewoks. I mean, these characters, these kid-friendly characters that seem kind of pushed into the story to, I don't know, for younger kids to relate to or to give it some sort of a durability factor. I happen to always like those characters growing up, strangely. Like I was a fan of like Snarf and a fan of these comical little characters. But Orko is, we were talking before about the serious He-Man and like the way you played with the figures seemed to be a more serious storyline than this cartoon. Orko definitely contributes to the lighter heartedness of the show. And he's not part of the plot, the main plot, but he is kind of the first thing we see. And I think kids were supposed to like him, but you always had an adverse reaction to him. You were not a fan.
Yeah, no, not a fan. I didn't care for his hijinks. I never purchased an Orko toy or never asked for one. I much preferred the adventure side of the series of the show than the what's this little mystical being going to do to screw things up.
So he really didn't work for you then. Did you find yourself frustrated with other shows like the character of Snarf? If you watch Thundercats or any of these characters, were you often annoyed by like the child character or the comic relief of these shows?
No, I think it's on a case by case basis. There are times where it, I think, is an obvious addition, and they're there specifically to add the comic relief and that sort of thing. And if it's more subtle, I don't think I'd be bothered by it. I mean, you mentioned a couple there. I didn't really watch. You mentioned Mask. I didn't watch that one often enough to really have an opinion.
It was like a little robot that the kid had that. I mean,
I'm just trying to think of like the Saturday cartoons and weekend cartoons that I would watch, and a lot of them were older, like Scooby-Doo or Looney Tunes. So I don't know if I had a lot of shows. They were either older like that, or they were all kid characters.
Something like a DuckTales or something like that.
Like a DuckTales, or when I was younger, Smurfs, that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah. No, then it sounds like the shows you were watching, maybe Orko was the rarity in that. Which I guess works in your favor. Did you like any of the characters that were on this episode? We're given He-Man, we're given Battle Cat, Man at Arms, Teela. Did any of them kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I like all of them. And again, coming at it from a toy line perspective, I enjoyed all of them. I would have loved to have seen a couple more characters. I think, I was a little let down that all we got was Ram Man. And my memory of Ram Man was pretty much non-existent, I guess, because I don't remember him being anything like he was in this episode. I mean, his characteristics, his ramming ability, I've got that cold. But the way he talked...
Oh, see, I do remember that.
You do?
Because he was one of the first figures I got. So I think when he was on the show, I was excited to see him. Yeah, he's a basically Rocky Balboa.
Yeah,
with one more hit to the head than he's gotten.
And I guess that makes sense.
It doesn't, because kind of like if that's your special ability, you should be resilient to that or not do it. I mean, if your thing is I hit things with my head. Which you want to talk about the lessons at the end of the episode. The one episode Ram Man gave a lesson on, that was it, not to do that.
Really?
Kids, be careful, don't go hit. Yeah.
My goodness.
Which again is do as I say, not as I'm doing in this cartoon. Seems to be that. But I liked Man at Arms. He's a nice kind of father figure to everyone, it seems.
It seems. He's Teela's father. I don't know if I knew that.
I think he's adopted. I think she's adopted. I think it's her adopted father. I'm not positive. I don't know if that's something that was maybe later, but yeah, they have that relationship. Teela's an important character. I know she doesn't. This isn't a good episode for her.
Not for her. No.
All she has to do is be rescued, which made me think: did she ever do anything besides needing to be rescued? Like they make her. I think she's like the commander of their royal forces or something. Like, she has a high-ranking position.
Right.
She's important, and she does go into battle, without thinking about it. But yeah, she gets rescued a lot.
Yeah, in this episode.
And that's why I'm wondering, did she always? Because it's nice that she's there. And again, I think it's important. It was important for me, at least as a kid, that she was there.
Yeah.
And I assume Princess Leia is sort of the template for that character in these. Yeah, I think a lot of times stuff like this, it's male fantasy. Dungeons and Dragons is a cliche, but it's like someone brings their Dungeons and Dragons story to the script meeting, that's what you get. So it's a lot of like guys running around with swords and stuff. I think it's important to have like Tila, you have the sorceress Evelyn. Those are really the only female characters I can think of that reoccurred. But as a kid, having their presence on the show mattered. It gave it a fuller environment. It made it more approachable to me. But yeah, I do wonder, did she ever get to do anything? Or was her story always, I'll run in to try something, but I'm going to need help because, bring in He-Man, because it's his show, ultimately.
Yeah, ultimately. I mean, if we take this episode as our guide, that's pretty much all she did. There was some magnificent stuff in this one for her. What did she do? She fell down a cliff.
She did fall down a cliff?
Or into the white hole, which we haven't brought up yet. The magnificent white hole. There's so much I want to talk about, Tim.
Well, let's go right into the plot then. I think I think we need to. Unfortunately, there's not much of one, so we can get through this pretty quick. But the show, it basically has a call to action. They're in the palace, and then something strange is going on in another town. They give it a name. I forget what it is. So our heroes kind of go out. Basilia. Oh, well done. What made you remember that? Notes?
Well, you're always taking notes, man. You've got so many notes. You know so much about what we've watched, and I felt like I should have some actual facts and terms written down.
That's great. Actual facts. I'm glad Basilia is considered a fact.
That's the fact of this episode.
Yeah, what are they called there for? They wind up fighting, I guess, a tornado.
Yes, they basically said some odd things are happening.
Which is true.
That was it. It was just some strange happenings are going on in Basilia. Let's go. So yeah, He-Man has to, Prince Adam has to become He-Man, and Cringer has to become Battle Cat, and nobody else needs to get stronger. Tila, Man-at-Arms, they're all perfectly well prepared as is, and then they all travel to Basilia.
I mean, maybe just when they do it all when they get dressed, when they're up in the morning, they empower themselves. Adam waits. But yeah, they travel to Basilia and they fight a tornado. And this scene, I mean,
wind.
This scene, it's exciting, I think. I mean, I think as a kid it was exciting. It's definitely mysterious because you're right, strange going-ons. The theme of this episode is really no plot. Like they don't ever really tell you what's happening.
There's no people. It's just wind and rocks and lightning. Maybe I can't remember if the lightning came up at this point. And it's funny. Like I remember everybody had a chance to do something to a rock. There was a punching of a rock. There was a ramming of a rock.
Wait, who rammed the rock?
Ram Man.
Okay. And who man-armed the rock? Which one was that? Yeah, there's no villains here really.
No, not really.
Monsters.
Weather.
Which again, I do think watching it, I bet that would have been though exciting as a kid. I don't remember this episode. This was
what stood out during these moments for me, was the animation wasn't great, but the colors were bright. Mm-hmm. And the costumes were cool. And I think that's, as I was watching it, I was like, this is probably what kind of drew me to it. Because I just thought like the visual, well, the animation wasn't great. The visual was interesting to me. There was a lot of dynamic colors with their outfits. And all their outfits are pretty interestingly unique. And I thought that was neat to watch and to see it in action. Yeah, I think as a kid that would have been fun.
So it is a much better designed show than I remember. You're right. The colors are very vibrant. Again, the backgrounds are always so beautiful. And some of those backgrounds are very familiar.
Yeah.
the shots of the palace, they would always use the same backgrounds. When we eventually get the Castle Grayskull, those images are the same, but they're glorious looking images. And, for a show that's limited in animation, I think it's because they reuse the same movements. And I think I notice it now. I didn't as a kid. A lot of times, no one's moving except for their mouth. So it's a close-up on He-Man, and his mouth moves, maybe his eyes dart back and forth. And that could be creepy, but I don't know, it works. It works enough. I notice it now. But you're right. The colors and the costumes, this is a fun show to watch.
Yeah.
Like, the animation is not as awful as I thought. So yeah, I was really into this fight scene that was going on. And in watching it, this I remember is He-Man most of the time, because He-Man's usually the one who saves everyone and defeats everyone. It's rarely is it with his sword, never is it with a gun. He most of the things he does with his strength. Sometimes I think there's other episodes where it's a little more involved, but like I think he wrestles the tornado, right? Or he goes the opposite direction.
He spins it on his sword. So he is using his sword there. He uses his sword to sort of spin it in the air. He spins his sword in the air to create a duplicate tornado, I guess, that sucks in the killer tornado. And then he pushes with his sword the tornado into the atmosphere. And it takes his sword with him.
Which he doesn't notice, does he, right away? He's not bothered by it.
Nobody is bothered by it. He's just like, I lost my sword. It's the sword that gives you your power. I was really put off by the fact that nobody really seemed bothered by the fact that he didn't have his sword. The sword of power is no longer with him.
Okay, and it just disappears from his hand. There isn't like nothing grabs it.
Right.
I don't remember that.
It does. It reappears. Did you notice that it reappears briefly when they return to the castle?
That piece of animation, he's wearing a sword.
Yes.
His very Iron Cross designed chest plate. Does He-Man's design bother you a little bit? Given the title of the program? That's an Iron Cross on his chest plate, right?
I did not see it that way. It didn't stand out to me as a cross.
Because later, like I think in the comics and then definitely in the reboot, I think from 2002, they give him an H, I think, on his chest plate.
Okay.
I remember this as a kid when I would draw pictures of He-Man, and on the figure, I always saw it as an Iron Cross. An Iron Cross is a Nazi insignia of the Third Reich. He's this blonde-haired, muscle-bound man. I mean, it is a stretch to say this in the cartoon, obviously, but the fact that the cartoon versus, like, in the original action figures, this idea of masters of the universe, it was kind of like, have the power sword, you master the universe. There was no reason for the show to be called Masters of the Universe outside of the toy line. So there is this weird, I don't know, it's just floating out there. I don't think it's actually what they're intended, but there is just this weird Superman, blonde hair, master of something, shadow hanging over the show.
Yeah, it's not something I picked up on in the least as a youth,
and probably not now.
Didn't
either.
catch it now either as a post youth.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things where it's like, there's nothing to actually talk about because it's probably not intended. It just seems the for some reason the image on his chest plate, even as a child, it's weirded me out a little bit.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at it because it's never really stood out to me. Like I didn't even know there was an H at some point.
I think so. Maybe I'm misremembering all this. I'm not sure. But to stick with the plot.
Well, I mean, now you're talking about the white hole, Tim. Now I'm starting to wonder. Maybe you're on to something here.
It's secretly encoded in our Masters of the Universe show. No, we find out that Hitler has opened a white hole. So they get back to... So yeah, He-Man loses his sword. They get back to the palace after this fight scene. And Orko, I guess, is freaking out, telling him it's gone, Castle Grayskull is gone. Did he? I guess
No, he
at some
doesn't
point,
say. This is a thing I don't like about Orko. He doesn't say it's gone. Castle Grayskull has disappeared. He just runs around, goes up to everybody else who, by the way, is trying to have a conversation with each other, and is like, "It's gone. It's disappeared. It's gone. It's disappeared."
They're all ignoring him, though. No one will listen to him.
But he's not saying anything.
He's saying something disappeared. Obviously, he's shooken up. Someone could. I mean, are they still playing? Because the whole setup at the beginning is they're all pretending to not remember it's his birthday because he's having a surprise party. Having just fought a spinning sentient tornado and having just lost his sword, are they still doing that bit of not acknowledging it's his fucking birthday?
That's the impression I was given.
Because eventually, I don't remember how it happened, but eventually he does get it out that Castle Grayskull has gone missing, just like He-Man's sword.
Yes.
And do they connect that at that point? Well, if my sword is disappearing, maybe the castle is also disappearing?
They do. Not only do they do that, and I wish I had written this entire speech down, but Man-at-Arms basically takes a look at this glowing orb, this white hole, and puts it together that clearly Skeletor is up to no good. He must have found a neutron star and got the sorceress to do mumbo jumbo Jim with this neutron star and cause it to disappear. And I think he even said why he would have done that.
He gives a bit of a monologue, a bit of a presentation. And I guess then the idea is they have to go into it to rescue, because the sorceress, this bird costumed character who watches over Castle Grayskull, is also missing.
Right.
So
and she does some sort of telepathy. She like superimposes her face on the white hole that leads He-Man to believe he must follow that face into the hole.
She doesn't speak. That's true.
No, yeah.
Did you see her face? It's trippy, sort of. It's a weird. But so He-Man, Teela, and Battle Cat? Do they all go into the white hole?
They do. And here's the thing: Teela says, "I'm coming with you." At least as I remember it, she says, "I'm coming with you," and the three of them go. And He-Man and Battle Cat jump in, and she falls in.
Yeah, she falls in.
Which I'm like, you just established that you're following them. I don't understand why that had to happen.
Because she's not as skilled. That's too bad.
It is too bad.
But, as she's going in, there's a surprisingly deep, meaningful character moment where Man-at-Arms' eye tears up. Like he and I think it's Orko are there, and like I think Orko says, "Oh, I hope they get back or something." And Man-at-Arms says something along the lines of "Me too." And there's a little tear under his eye because he just watched Teela jump into the white hole, and that's that. I was like, that's deeper than I recall the show, because he doesn't say "my daughter." This is something you have to bring to the episode to know that it's his daughter and that he's bothered by. I thought that's a very nice subtle in this show that just gave us science on how this is working. That's a subtle gesture of the show. That touched me enough to care about Man-at-Arms. I don't remember liking Man-at-Arms as a kid. I love that character. He seems very important to the show.
He seems to be more in charge than He-Man, because he has the knowledge. He's the one that comes and tells them something's going on in the other town. He plans, the rescue of that town, I guess. And yeah, he just seems to be more grounded than the rest of them.
Well, my guess is that he's a mentor to Adam, to Prince Adam. And since he's one of at the opening credits tell us that Man-at-Arms, Orko, and the Sorceress are the three who know that Prince Adam is also He-Man. So maybe that's a remnant of Prince Adam in He-Man's mind to also just always defer to him. Like he is sort of the leader. Like he is sort of for all of them. Why does Orko know? I mean, what benefit is it to having Orko know that Prince Adam is He-Man? Is it because he's a magical creature?
It's probably because there's episodes where, oh my gosh, Orko's about to give it away.
Okay, so for comical reasons, Prince Adam said, "Hey, I'm He-Man," and Orko believed it. Understood. It's kind of hinted at an episode that I think his mom, Prince Adam's mom, knows too. Queen Marlena, I think, has figured it out or says something.
Interesting.
But maybe. But the focus on this episode, yes, they jump into the white hole, And where they come out is this trippy dimension. And I loved this segment so much.
As did I.
Yeah, right. It's just it's like a 1960s Jack Kirby Silver Surfer comic or something. It's just the backgrounds are ridiculous. It's creepy. It's one of those things where up is down, left is right. Everything's a path into nothing. And, you know, you see shots of them kind of just running around just in silhouette, which is a very nice piece of animation.
Yeah.
There's no setup to how they get in there. There's no real explanation.
None at all.
Of where they are. And it's just, I don't know what I would have made of this as a kid, but this gave me like these chills of kind of like, I bet this would be cool to wake up at 1 a.m. and put this sequence on.
Yeah. I like how at one point they just know that they have to get past these creatures. And then it cuts to these, like this tunnel with tentacles.
Yeah.
And then they go inside those tentacles and there's like these serpent creatures and they fight them for a while. And I love, did you catch how He-Man, he pulled Tila away from one. Tila, again, getting caught by a serpent creature. He basically, I think, stuck the serpent's tail in its mouth.
Oh, really?
That's how I saw it. It was, you know, it's a little weird. You don't know, you know, like you're saying, what's up and down, but it looked like that's what he did. He grabbed the tail and replaced Tila with the guy's tail.
The sequence, it's great. I don't remember sequences like this in the show. I'd be curious if more had this, because I said it at the beginning earlier. I think too. It just has the feeling of whoever wrote or designed or is animating this. It's just kind of like, I've played Dungeons and Dragons. Here's some stuff we did, and just throw it in there. Like with instead of like let's make a kid show. Here's some creepy traditional Frank Frazetta shit or something. And I would watch this show. I'd watch this Adventures in Far Out White Holand or wherever they are show. And again, there's no explanation for what's going on, but they find Castle Grayskull, I think, right? It's floating there or something.
They do.
And then this is where we finally see the villain, right?
Skeletor on the throne. The sorceress is trapped.
He's just sitting there. There's no reveal. They already knew to expect him. Like, you don't get the, well, who's behind this? Oh, it's Skeletor moment. They've already figured it out.
Right. Man-at-Arms figured that out by seeing the glowing orb.
the white hole. And there's no setup to Skeletor's plan or really what he's doing.
Right.
Did you catch he refers to this as his dimension? He says, you're in my dimension now. Mm-hmm. It's like there's some hints of something going on, but yeah, there should be, regardless of how I like this trippy unexplained aspect, there should be 4 seconds of explanation somewhere in this episode that Skeletor stole something and transported the castle, or or keep the mystery of who is behind this. It's like there's no mystery setup or drama to this.
No. And there's little drama to what unfolds when you're there as well.
They sort of peters out.
Yeah, they sort of try and make it interesting at first when they talked about the sorcerer said that my powers work in reverse here. My powers work in reverse. And so I'm like, oh, wow, that's interesting. They're going to have to do something different and unexpected. But then when they started using their powers, it was pretty normal. Everything moves forward. The only thing I think they were trying to tie in as moving in reverse was that she had to get Skeletor next to a mirror and kind of blast him through the mirror. But even that, like her blast had to pass him to reach the mirror and bounce back to him. So this whole reverse thing,
kind of interesting,
I guess. And then the other thing too is, as they're walking through this interdimensional landscape, there's this glowing red orb following them the whole time, which added to the interesting coolness of that segment.
Oh,
and then it just turns out to be the sword. It ends up
following them.
Yeah, it ends up kind of hovering over He-Man, and it materializes into the sword at the exact moment that he needs it.
And I guess they knew that? Like, he's not...
I don't think they did. I don't know how they could have possibly have known that.
Yeah, this episode, I don't think it is because I'm sure they didn't overwrite an episode of this show ever. But I feel like, did they just take out plot points so we could see more of this dimension, which I'm fine with?
Well, if they took anything out, it was to show more of Orko's birthday.
If we will get to that, we will get to his birthday.
But how about how he saves the day? How about how he puts everything right?
You mean by having Skeletor run away?
No, he does, but he lifts
he lifts the fucking
castle. He lifts the castle. He even says at one point, "This is the fulcrum point," and starts smashing at it. And then he starts to lift it, but he can't quite lift it. So he summons the sorceress and asks her to give him a little extra strength. And then he lifts the entire castle and the bedrock that it's on and throws it out of the white hole dimension. And it's a perfect shot. It lands back in their dimension, right in the same place it belonged.
Yeah. Well, and here's where I think the episode messed up. You could rationalize what's happening by saying it has something to do with the dimension they're in, or the fact that he's at the base of Castle Greyskull. They don't, but maybe something funnels enough power into him that way. This episode sets itself up that it could almost be an origin story, either of Castle Greyskull, of the power sword, of where He-Man's power comes from, because the sorceress says a line, I think, about how, the Skeletor wants to steal the castle's where you derive your power. If this show, and it never was, but if this show was interested in building a mythology and a history through repetition, this could have given you that, like the secret of Castle Grayskull, because it should be a climatic deal that, Skeletor finally did it, because what does he always want to do? He wants to either get He-Man or get Castle Grayskull, and he did.
Yeah.
He's got it in his dimension. There should have been some weight to this, and I feel like they could have maybe explained, well, He-Man can pick it up because it's a different dimension. Things work differently. The castle's right here. I don't know why he can throw it perfectly and no furniture falls over. But I just don't. That is kind of missing, and I'm sure I wasn't looking for that as a kid. I was never looking for their origin stories as a kid, or I would just make them up in my mind. But now I think maybe it's because cartoons now do give you backstory on everything. I feel like every kid's cartoon I watch, I enjoy it, but there's always a healthy amount of where people come from, who they are. This show doesn't have any of it. Like what Skeletor, what do you think about Skeletor as a character?
Well, he's a lot whinier than I remember.
Yeah, no, he's a coward.
Yeah.
I like the look. He's got a creepy look. He's iconic in that look. But yeah, he's goofier. He's got great color schemes. He's got his Havoc staff, but there's nothing to set him, like he might as well be a guy with a mustache and a top hat for how he's talking and acting. So yeah, in that sense, as an adult watching this, he's not menacing. I'm not scared of Skeletor. He's comical, I guess, but yeah, there's no weight to this episode either. Clearly because they can pick up Castle Grayskull, but you don't. None of the threats seem real.
Right.
There's nothing, and again, Skeletor runs away. They're like, "Oh, he'll be back," and then they get back to the castle, and Orko finds out they were all planning a birthday party, and I think he eats a lot of the cake. Is that correct?
Well, what he does is he still believes, that's our episode, but he still believes that nobody's aware that it's his birthday. So he uses his magic to throw himself a party full of cake and candy. Then he eats all that candy, and when it's all gone, they say, "Hey, come into the kitchen. Chef Alan has something for you. And also a cake."
Oh, Chef Alan. Yeah, the Orko storyline is only there to give us the lesson at the end.
Right.
Like this whole episode, you could have dropped the Orko parts and then padded out a little bit of what was going on.
Yeah, with your storyline.
With the storyline I'm writing 30 whatever years later. But no, it's just what was, I don't know if Orko was on every episode, but it's kind of like, what was the point of that?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't impact the story. It's, if anything, it's just disjointed. It's Orko's purpose is to tell them Castle Grayskull is gone, but they could have found that out anyway.
Right.
Any way they wanted to. So yeah, it is kind of uneven, and it doesn't seem to The concern with this doesn't seem like the story was first. I mean, the concerns seem to be like, here's what we got to have some comical stuff with Orko. We've got to have a fight scene. And then you have to have this number of fight scenes. Skeletor has to be there, and then things have to be fine. I mean, it's a simplistic, a very simplistic story with some really heady imagery, which I loved. Like really some tripped out stuff to look at. I'm curious to see other episodes now because I want to see does this happen a lot? Is this kind of because that is a nice sort of that is your heavy metal swords and sorcerer fantasy right there in your kids cartoon.
Let's come back to it in a couple months and make it a binging podcast.
Perhaps. I don't want to learn too much in terms of the morals, but yes. Was this a good reality or bad reality for you?
It was good. It was decent enough that I actually considered showing my girls.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought it was.
Do you think this would hold their attention? They're not too old for it now?
I don't know. I don't think they are. I think they'd find it interesting. I think I told you that I introduced my oldest, who's 9, to the Fox X-Men cartoon from the 90s.
You did mention that.
And she enjoyed that. She enjoyed that so much. She actually, we haven't watched it in a week. It was a week ago. We watched 2 episodes, the first 2. And she told me today, she asked me again who that character was with Storm. And I told her it was Rogue. And she's like, I like Rogue. So
she's following it. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's an action-adventure thing. I think He-Man might do it. There's Teela. There's the Sorceress. There's a cat. There's a scaredy cat.
There's a scaredy cat.
They might like it. I wouldn't mind sitting there watching it with them.
Oh, I'd be curious then. Yeah, because I don't know. Like, this was a good reality. This surprised me.
Yeah.
I was not prepared to like it. I really enjoyed it. I mean, again, it might be because I went in thinking I would hate it, but, it stoked the right nostalgia for the stuff that was familiar.
Did it make you want to get the toys?
Not really. Well,
no, you didn't want to have some toys to play with?
I will say that the night after I watched it, I looked up some stuff online, just to see. Like I wanted to look at more of the box art. I wanted to look at the design work for that. No, I enjoyed it. It's a fun show. It's a silly show that I think was intentionally silly, and I liked it.
We've got to win.
So there you go. There's a little something of something you probably have already heard. But if you like that episode, I would encourage you to check out the show. Check out 20th Century Pop. Where? At 20podcast.com. That's the main website. The most recent episode, even if it's a rerun, is always up there streaming, as well as links to all of our past episodes. So you can hear all of our past 92 episodes plus bonus episodes. You'll also find links there where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and other podcast providers. That way you get a new episode every other week when one drops. You can also, what can you do there? You can follow us, I guess. Follow us on Facebook. We got a little Facebook page there. Actually, if you want to support the show, we're looking for people to support the show. I would ask that you follow us on Twitter at 20popcast and also on Instagram, also at 20popcast, and kind of interact with us there. Talk with us, share some episodes, share some thoughts, and maybe we can get a little bit of a conversation going. Again, we'll be back next week with a brand new episode, and Bob will be here. It won't just be me, and this part here even will be a little more interesting because of 2 voices. I don't know. Thanks for checking this out, and we'll talk to you in the present of next week about the past. That should have been worded differently, but there you have it. Tell you what, why don't we start the list? You read one to me, I'll say whatever, and then I'll read the next one on my list.
Okay.
Is that good or bad?
That seems perfectly fine.
Are you ready? I'll say the first one, and again, we'll alternate.
Sure. And here's the thing, though.
Ready?
Here's the thing.
Okay.
We both have lists of fake and real. So when you say the real, I'll probably have that on my list.
Maybe. That's true. We'll find out.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Okay.
So, you ready to start?
Yes, go ahead.
Leech.
No man. Stinkor.
Yes, man. Mantenna.
Yes, man. Mandibull.
No, man. Christopher.
No man. Woman at arm's length.
No, man. Evelyn.
Yes, man. Nitpicker.
No, man. Ninjor.
Yes, man. Bendy leggy.
No, man. Clockor.
No man. Carpal tunnel.
No, man. Timepiece. Piece.
No man. Farmhands.
No, man. Timepiece. Peace.
No man. Snout spout.
Yes, man. Hour.
No man. Elector rat.
No, man. Seiko.
Yes man. Rama Rama Ding Dong.
No, man. Jitsu?
Yes man.
Why don't you do 4 in a row and then I'll do 4 in a row?
Mechaneck.
Yes, man.
Fork fingers.
No, man.
Clamp champ.
Yes, man.
Poker champ.
No, man.
Tennis champ.
No, man.
All right, you go.
Blast attack.
Yes man.
Rio Blast.
Yes man.
Fabergé.
No man.
Dragster.
No man.
Balls and hands.
No man. Erector.
No, man.
Kelazuma.
No, man. Cyclone.
Yes man.
Cykill.
No man.
Squeeze with 3 S's.
Yes man.
Squeeze with 4 S's.
Okay, maybe I got that wrong then.
Battle Armor He-Man.
Yes man.
Thunder Punch He-Man.
Probably yes. Man.
Flying Fists He-Man.
Yes man.
Chandlor.
I think that's enough, Tim.
Gellar, Phoebe B-Gun, Monocore, Rachel, and Screech.
Screech is a yes.
Yeah. So I will say you only got a couple wrong. Leech is a real one. You said he was not. And Squeeze. No, you got Squeeze with 3 S's. You got that right. Dragster is also a real character.
Yeah, you got most of mine right too.
Did I miss any? I may have.
No, I don't think you did miss any.
Okay, they're memorable names.
They are, and I just love the fact that we came to the same idea. I guess it's not.
Yeah. I don't know if the listeners will, but I enjoyed it. We'll see how that edits down.